All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are here with Conversations with Rob. I have a special guest. I'm a huge fan of his, Jordan Chariton. Has been on various media networks, working in the ins and outs of the industry. After that, he started Jordan Chariton Reports and now Status Coup. And I'm a huge fan of yours, Jordan. I really appreciate you being on the show, and thanks for your time.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
All right, so Jordan, what got you into the media industry? I know you've worked at Fox, MSNBC, other sorts of media industries. Where have you? What got you into that, rather?
Tell you the truth, my father, when I was in college, my father had a customer, actually, funny, from Fox News. So I wasn't really into politics or news at that time, but I had the opportunity to get an internship. It seemed kind of cool, oh, I'll go work at a news network. I really had no concept. I think I was like 18 or 19, what Fox News was as far as like Republican propaganda. So yeah, I interned there, and from there I interned at ESPN Radio, got a little sports flavor. And then in college, while in Tampa, I interned at the local Fox station, was just a local news station. So I think I wouldn't say that I got the hunger I have now during that time, but I got a perception while working in Tampa at what was wrong with like local news and corporate news, because it was just constant, five people shot and killed, sensational segments, nonsense, and I thought that there was what was missing was more of the human interest and people suffering. So that's in college, that's where I first got my interest in kind of speaking with actual people about their issues that I didn't feel were highlighted in local or national media.
So you worked there with a lot of new big news stations, as you just stated. Uh, just kind of, I know you kind of gave a little bit of the ins and outs of the industry, but what was something like maybe a person like me that doesn't work it, that hasn't worked in mainstream news, that's like kind of behind the scenes that that happened that maybe we wouldn't know if if you didn't work in news. If you could just kind of give elaborate on that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, my first internship was at Fox, and believe it or not, the majority of that summer was not Republican propaganda. The majority of that summer, they were doing, I don't know if you know the story, Natalie Holloway, the
Right,
girl who
Aruba,
went
yeah,
missing many years ago. Where was it?
Aruba,
Aruba.
yeah,
And it was just nonstop all summer. And, obviously it's a story. I felt bad, but
right.
you don't see like missing black girls get covered for 3 months straight. So, I remember being in meetings at Fox News where, producers would be proposing other things and they'd be like, no, nothing but Natalie, nothing but Natalie. So that's where I first got the taste or understanding that this wasn't necessarily like a news operation. This was a ratings operation.
Right.
And then when I went to MSNBC, I would pitch segments in certain meetings. And one producer, if I don't remember exactly who it was, but she said like, "Oh, I wanted to cover the because it was winter, and on the way home, I worked afternoons to nights, so I would get off at midnight, and I would be walking like in the New York City winter and see just homeless person after homeless person. So I suggested, hey, can I go out maybe with a reporter or something, and we could go interview homeless people? And they were like, kind of like, oh, that's so nice of you, but like, let's get back to business here. And at that point, I remember they were talking about a Georgetown student. Her name was Sandra Fluke, being
Right.
called a slut by Rush Limbaugh, which I thought was awful, but I don't really think that deserved like 2 weeks of nonstop coverage. So
Right.
it's kind of like whether it be at Fox, MSNBC, you would propose kind of what I call not human interest, but just like speaking to actual people and getting out real issues rather than drilling the same two stories on a loop. And they weren't having any of it.
All right, so I know you've talked about, and I'm a big fan. I've watched a lot of your videos from TYT politics on to now. I know you talked about your dad was a, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but your dad is a Republican, and a lot of people in your family are conservative. So how does a guy like you coming out of a Republican family become so progressive?
Yeah, I wouldn't act like my dad did vote for Trump. He also voted for Bernie in the primary.
Oh,
So
wow.
like he was a registered Democrat, and I think the vote for Trump among my father and my mother, blowing up both their spot, was more disdain for Hillary because I know like they voted for Bill Clinton in the 90s. So they've gone both ways. They're not like card carrying, like MAGA breathing Republicans. But frankly, I love my father, but he's ignorant on the issue. Not like as far as racism, but
Right.
he's like, "What's wrong with having a businessman in the White House?" Like he actually thinks Trump would create jobs for America, and why can't the government run like a business? Blah blah blah. And I've tried explaining to him over and over, like, Dad, you have a small business. Are you getting a massive tax cut from Trump? Do you see all these plants reopening? But unfortunately, my father, like a lot of people, have Fox derangement syndrome. So he watches Fox on a loop. But also, my father, in fairness to him, he will tell you, which a lot of viewers might not like, but he would tell you, I don't care about as long as they support Israel. I mean, if Obama would have wore like an Israel pin and moved the embassy to Jerusalem, my father would have liked Obama. That's all he cares about. He's a Zionist. That's his thing. We don't really talk about it because obviously I'm not exactly on the same page. So they're not like card-carrying Republicans, but I would say that how I would, I was raised in a family that like value, do unto others how you would do unto yourself, yada yada yada. But it really where I got this yearning was beginning in college, because also in Tampa, where I went to college, it had a huge homeless population. Florida, sunny, I guess, homeless people were living there. And it was just unbelievable to me, like the symbolism. You have palm trees and all this beauty, but people living on the streets. And I would remember when I would go to the gas station in college to get whatever, food or beer when I was old enough, I would just see like homeless people in the gas station. I would talk to them. And that's when I started thinking in terms of like there's a real cognitive dissonance between what our media puts out there and what's happening on the streets.
Right. Well, and I see that even kind of to go back to what you said about your family with Boca Raton. I went to college in Boca Raton. It's a heavy Jewish population, and being in politics, and I like like many people, I listen to Jimmy Dore too, and like he said, Obama kind of captured everybody's brain when he came in, and I was a huge Obama guy, and in Boca, everybody loved Obama, but some people didn't because they thought he was against Israel. But I kind of digress. But
Yeah.
go ahead. I'm sorry, Jordan.
No, I was going to say, I mean, at that time, 2007, 2008, I was not at all politically aware like I am now. And I was a huge Obama fan. But part of that is not everyone could have what I have, like I've been fortunate to go out all across the country. So when you when you grow up in a bubble, whether it's Rhode Island, New York, DC, whatever, it's not like what the union workers in Ohio are struggling with
Yes.
firsthand, or the homeless people living out in homeless tent cities in Seattle and San Francisco and Denver and in Portland. I've been to a few of those. You just don't know. And the media doesn't report it, so how would you know? So I've been fortunate, obviously at the Young Turks, I was able to go out quite a bit, and now at Status Coup, I've been able to go out to a lesser degree. That's how I became not only informed, but kind of, I would say, righteously infuriated as to what was going on.
Right. So I do want to get to some Bernie stuff before I get to more about Status Coup toward the end of the interview. So about Bernie, so we did see the town hall last night. I know you kind of went live for a little bit. I did watch that little segment you and Ty did live. What did you guys think of that? With that, I thought he did pretty well. The Venezuela, where he could have been a little bit stronger on that. I do worry about, as you've talked about on your show, Bernie saying that, telling all the progressives that follow him, tone it down, let's play nice. And I think that's the mistake he made with Hillary sometimes in 2016. He wanted to play nice. He did at some times in New York in the debate against Hillary. He hit her a couple of times. But you know what? We can't play nice. As you've said so many times in your show, this is a time, this is a crucial election. We know about the Green New Deal and climate change is right on our doorstep. There's all sorts of things. My sister has a disability. She has autism. That's a big thing for me is universal health care and Medicare for all. We can't have Bernie saying play nice. What did you think about him saying that? And also as far as the town hall goes?
Yeah, covering him in 2016. At the end of the day, I understand his mentality and just the way he is I want to win on the issues, but that's not how politics works, unfortunately. People respond to a fighter. People respond in some ways to negative campaigning. I don't think you should negatively campaign, attacking Kamala Harris or Cory Booker or whatever on a personal level. But, I think the establishment has gotten away with making, pointed criticisms on policy a personal attack. Hillary Clinton did it during the 2016 election. That's a personal attack. No, you took money and you changed your votes. That's a policy, quote unquote, attack. So I think, Bernie probably has people in his ear and probably himself thinks that, there are realities. If he's going to win the Democratic nomination, which I assume they're going to try to rig it in different ways, he's going to have to pull at least 10 to 15%, I would say, of the voters who voted for Hillary Clinton. You need to get some of that establishment voters. So I think that's what's in his calculus of, trying to be more diplomatic, trying to, even though I don't think his supporters have really done anything wrong, I don't see Bernie people online attacking Kamala Harris for what she's wearing or calling her, names. But I think he's trying to play nice. But the problem is you can't play nice with people that it's not about playing nice. They want you to lose no matter what. So if you give them an inch, they're going to take the whole field. So I'm not comparing them to terrorists, but it's like you can't negotiate with terrorists. Like they're not operating on good faith, and the people that Bernie is trying to play nice with are not operating on good faith. So I would say to him, have your message, but also be firm. Say, I can't control what people do on social media, but I'm in this to win it. My critiques are on policy and not on personal nature, and I don't think we should be distracted by people saying otherwise. On his, I thought it was pretty good. I liked his message. I didn't hear it much in 2016, but I think he's making his message now. Socialism is actually about human rights. Right. It's a very simple message, but I didn't hear much of that in 2016. So when Wolf Blitzer and the audience and people try to, I call it boogerize the word socialism, he's saying, no, here's what I believe on. I believe in basic human rights. Right. And you have to get that into psychology that healthcare and education are not like a luxury. They're a right of living. That is a hard thing to get into the zeitgeist of America because we've been drilled forever and ever that you got to work hard to get health care or you got to earn your education. Well, yes, you have to work hard to make the most of your education, but you shouldn't have to work hard just to get an opportunity in the first place. The only thing that I would criticize him on, I still think he needs work on how he communicates with the black community. I don't think he's doing something specifically wrong. As a white man, obviously you have to come off in a way that you're not condescending to black people. Right. But I also think he needs to explain not just top line phrasing like we need to get rid of racism and racial disparities, but he needs to really connect how his policies disproportionately help the black community. I'll give you an example. He wants to break up the big banks. Well, the global financial crash disproportionately screwed black Americans. Right. That's who got foreclosed on more than anyone else. He should be, when he's talking to a black voter asking a question, he should be connecting to that. When you talk about gender pay gap, there's also a racial pay gap. You could talk about black people disproportionately. I don't have the exact numbers, but black people very much occupy our military. The labor unions. I just went to Detroit, Ohio, to cover the labor layoffs. Hell of a lot of those workers at GM are black Americans. Flint. Predominantly black. So I think he needs to not only talk in top lines about attacking racism and racial disparity, but connect it economically. Policy X would disproportionately help black Americans.
So you think that reparations answer hurt him then last night? Is that kind of what you're inferring to with that also?
No, it wasn't the reparations answer specifically. It was, I saw at least one other question. Oh, somebody asked about, black people or the black community has distrust of you, blah, 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 blah. His reparations answer, frankly, I mean, you're either for it or you're not. I would just, if he's not for reparations, he should say, well, I'm not. My form of reparations are government programs for inner cities, this and that. I think it was a little wish-washy, and it came off kind of. I don't know. I don't think it's how he intended it, but I think it came off weird. I think you're either for reparations, not just for black people, but Native Americans too. Or you're not. And if you're not, say it, say why, and let the chips fall where they fall. But I think he kind of was in the middle too much.
All right, and I do.
By the way, that's not just him. That's every candidate. Other than Marianne Williamson, there's no candidate. She is running. I put in an interview request. There's no candidate that has said, like Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris have kind of said something that sounds like reparations. But I think Bernie Sanders should either say he's for it or I'm not for direct reparations, but I am for this.
I do hope he comes on your program. And to go back to the Tulsi Gabbard interview, which was great, I want to know what you think as far as Bernie and Tulsi. First of all, do you think that Tulsi will get on the debate stage? Secondly, do you think, what do you think, I guess, do you think their chances of maybe combining together as a ticket? And maybe, I think that would definitely help them win the election with those two together.
First of all, I really appreciated Congressman Gabbard interviewing with me. The response was overwhelmingly positive, which indicates the more, Bernie, for example, when he had more time between primary dates to campaign, generally his poll numbers went up, he gained more traction. I think it would be the same with Congressman Gabbard, because the more exposure her message gets, the more people like her. Yes, the corporate media, if there's one thing they are scared way more of than Medicare for all, it's anyone putting a dent in the military-industrial complex. So I think when you ask, do I think she's getting on the debate stage? I don't want to lie to you. I think it's an uphill climb, especially, as far as I could tell, I don't really see even independent media covering her. I had a few people reach out to me after asking, like, can I get a contact? So hopefully we'll see more interviews with her.
Besides you and Jimmy Dore, I haven't seen any, like you said, you and Jimmy, and that's it. I haven't seen any interview or anything.
Yeah, and if I was an Access journalist, and if my model operated on Access, I would say, yes, Tulsi and Bernie, because I want another interview with Tulsi. But I'm not an Access journalist, so I'm going to tell you my pick would be Bernie Sanders and Nina Turner. And by the way, I don't say that because I wouldn't be upset with Tulsi Gabbard as vice president, but I'm talking about what I think is the best ticket, and B, who I think would be the best vice president. I think Nina Turner, not that Tulsi, nothing away from Tulsi Gabbard. I think Nina Turner is a transformational person. Forget politics. I've met her several times. I could sniff out bullshit a mile away. This person is the real deal. I think that Nina Turner, not that Tulsi Gabbard hasn't experienced things in her life, but Nina Turner comes from struggle. That's different. I think that she would be someone as vice president that literally is an organizer, that literally can also, I'm not trying to tokenize her, but it helps to send your message to the black community if you're Bernie when you have somebody of such a noteworthy figure. And secondly, I think the bottom line is, Nina Turner, to me, you got to inspire people. I think Tulsi does inspire people, don't get me wrong, but I think Nina Turner is just at a different level in an oratory fashion. So that would be my pick. Tulsi Gabbard as Secretary of State, I would be very happy with. And I know that Jimmy right now has Tulsi ahead of Bernie for him personally. I don't tell people how to vote. Me personally, I'm a Bernie guy, but I love Tulsi too. It's not like choosing. I don't look at it as choosing Bernie over Tulsi. I just look at it as, listen, I go with the person who brought me to the dance originally. Bernie is that guy. I don't love him on every policy, but at the same time, there's things about Tulsi that I didn't get a chance to ask her, but she voted in 2015 for a bill that would have stopped Syrian refugees from coming in America. I think that's problematic. I only had 20 minutes, so I couldn't ask her all I wanted to ask. So there's some things about each politician you're going to have problems with, but I think those who are saying Bernie's selling out, and those who are saying that, you're going to be in a lonely crowd, because no one's ever going to make you happy if you think Bernie is a sellout.
Yeah, nobody will give you 100%. I agree with that. So Jordan, I really want to talk about some of the reporting you've done on status coup. But first, before we get into that, I know you were doing Jordan Chariton reports after the TYT. Is Jordan Sheridan Report still in, or is it just status quo right now? Quickly.
No. Jordan Chariton Reports was basically just like me launching a YouTube channel before,
Okay.
just so I could like get my face back into the fold before
Right.
I launched like the network that we had been planning. So that's gone. And now I think we officially made it status quo in September. So yeah, for a few months I was just like live on my channel as myself.
Right.
And then, we brought on Ty, which has been great, and Jen, and long term, the goal was to hire more reporters. And let me tell you something, part of why it took so long to launch Status Coup, a lot of people wouldn't know this, it's damn hard to get a name through for a company. We had several names that we couldn't get through because it seems like the whole world decided to trademark the names we wanted 6 months before. I actually went down to the Lower East, downtown in New York to a WeWork office to try and kind of like figuratively muscle a name away from a company that didn't seem to be using it, but that didn't work out. But I'm happy with Status Quo. I think it represents who I am and what we're trying to do. And yeah, so we launched this in September. It's way, way harder than what I did at the Young Turks because not that wasn't hard, but it's not just reporting. You're trying to grow a company, and you have to worry about funding and getting a lot of logistical things I never had to deal with. But at the same time, it's very liberating to have your own entity and kind of it's our vision, and I don't have to run things by people.
So who gave you the idea? I know you kind of said that, Jordan Sheridan Reports kind of evolved into Status Quo. How did you get the name, and kind of what was the idea of that?
Yeah, so I wanted something that was kind of in your face and edgy. I'm not exactly a stand there like a robot journalist. So, full disclosure, originally I wanted to call it Heist. Because what else do you have to say? That
Right.
America just is a heist.
Right.
But that was taken. We jiggled around with Cabal, which was also taken, and the finalists were the People, and we were playing around like we want to attack the status quo. So what's like a pun? What's a way of attacking the status quo? Blah blah blah. And I don't know, we were just like, it was Jen and I talking back and forth and shooting out names for like an hour or two, and I just thought, what about a status coup? My only concern was like, as we get bigger, they'll probably try to attack us that we're like inciting violence. So I've been clear, like this is a journalistic coup d'etat. But really, the name behind it is literally when I talk about the revolving door, when I talk about the oligarchy, when I talk about the corporate media, it's all part of one status quo. They don't work in the same building, but they all work on the same wavelength to maintain the status quo. And I really think that the only way to attack the status quo is not just a political movement, as for Bernie, but you need to wake more people up. So how do you wake more people up? Yeah, you have elections every 2 years, every 4 years, but you also need to cover, workers being attacked and laid off, lead poisoning, environmental genocide, police brutality, the list goes on. So we really want to attack the status quo. So that's kind of where the idea for Status Quo came. And I like the idea of just like, 2 words instead of like a long-winded name. Yeah.
So Jordan, you've been to East Chicago, Indiana. You've been to Flint many times. You've kind of pretty much put Flint up on a pedestal. You just went to Cleveland and talked about the lead crisis over there with, what was it, 92 kids with that lead. You did that video. Since the reporting's happened, and I know Michigan has a new governor. I forgot the woman's name that just got elected. Did they bring back pods? And since you've been to Michigan and reported on that flood crisis, has anything changed?
So I can't really get into full details, but
Sure.
now that there's a new governor, Gretchen Whitmer,
Right.
and a new attorney general, Dana Nessel, we've had communication with the new government. I won't say who, but we did have a meeting. My last trip to Michigan a couple weeks ago, we did have a meeting with one of the government officials that's pretty high up. which certainly was not going to happen in Rick Snyder's administration. And the reason we were able to get that meeting is because of the reporting we did. You know, it's not often that reporters are, you know, welcome to meet with like high-ranking government officials, where the government officials want your information to possibly pursue charges. So that's, you know, I'm not holding my breath. It's a long process for anything to happen, but the bottom line is we did some old school reporting over the summer and fall. We knocked on hundreds of doors, and we found evidence that essentially the environmental agency under Governor Snyder had manipulated the lead water testing and cooked the data. So has something happened yet? No, but is our work being looked at the highest levels of Michigan's government? Yes. If they don't do anything, then that would indicate to me there is a bipartisan consensus of moving on and not to hold those accountable. As far as the pods, they are not reopened yet. That's something that I have put in a request to find out why, because the new governor had said that she was going to reinstate funding. In fairness to her, the Republican legislature, Michigan's House and Senate are both Republican, are basically trying to overturn everything she does. So that might be part of the reason why she hasn't reopened the pods, among other things in Flint. But the point is, you know, a big reason a lot of corporate journalists don't do the type of reporting we do is it's really, really labor intensive. Like, just to break that story, we would have never broke that story if there weren't 10 to 11 trips before then. Because the only reason I was able to even like figure out that they were cheating on the testing was all the sources I have built up and the relationships I have built up, where by the time I went to Flint over the summer and I was knocking on doors, I was already like, you know, it was already a second home by then. I knew where to look. I knew who to ask for help, for information. So corporate media, A, I don't think cares enough, and B, they're expected to get clicks, ratings now. So we're trying to build the business very differently, where we're not as reliant on like getting 100,000 or millions of views on every video, but we're more reliant on asking regular Americans and people around the world, because we have international viewers, pay $5, $10 a month, $20 a month. Our model is heavy paid membership, so that we don't have to worry about clicks and how many views we're getting or how many clicks on the website or how to get advertisers, because we have a huge base of financial support just from regular people. And I think that's what we're doing is very similar to Bernie. It's about changing psychology. People are used to free media, right? But I've been saying, well, what have you been getting for free? Crap. So is $5 a month or $10 a month? We have higher levels too, worth actual reporters in the field giving the microphone to people. And so far, it's been fortunate. We're at 565 paid members and growing.
Yeah, well, you turn on CNN and it's Russia all day, every day. MSNBC, the same thing. Like you said, no news, period. But a couple quick more questions. So basically, my question is, and this is my last political question, I want to get some fun questions in about you after that. I'm a real progressive. I've been watching you and TYT Politics and Status Coup since you started that, and I don't miss a show. I watch Jimmy Dore. I talk to these people that are so-called progressives or Democrats or whatever, and they call me a Bernie bro. They call me a Republican shill because I stand up for basically all the stuff that you stand up for and fight for, and Medicare for all, college for all those issues. And you get called a Bernie bro. I send them videos, some people that I'm friendly with, The View or Jimmy Dore, and I say, watch it. And they watch 2 minutes and they say, this is just fake, made up stuff. And these are so-called progressive Democrats or Democrats in general. How do we get to these people? How do you form your show to get to these people? How can I get to these people in general?
Well, first of all, I'm not trying to be an ageist, but my assumption is most of these people are a little older.
Yeah, they're 40s, 50s.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So the bottom line is this. You know, there's a lot of older progressives, so this is not a universal statement that older people are dumb. I have a lot of older viewers. But the bottom line is, and I say that a lot, so work with me on the bottom line. At the end of the day, older people are more used to the rigged, broken system, where it's kind of become like, that's politics. I mean, I've spoken at dinner tables with people be like, yeah, but that's politics, because it didn't affect them as negatively as it's affecting our generation. You know, so if you're 40, 45, or 50s, 60s, when you went to college, it was a lot less money. You know, when you were 40s or 50s or 60s, like when you got out of college, it wasn't a Hunger Games just to find a job with benefits.
Right.
You know, so they're a little more numb and disconnected to how severe the struggle and crisis is now. So I say, honestly, to tell you the truth, I think Bernie has a better chance picking off Republicans than he does some of these establishment Democrats, because I guarantee you, if you said to them, can you actually specify or send me any facts or information that would indicate what specifically he's saying wrong, whether it's me or Jimmy, they won't. Because, by the way, as humbly as I could say it, once or twice I've had to send out a correction tweet if I sent out a poll that was wrong or I mentioned numbers that were wrong. I've never had to correct a major story. I'm reporting on Flint in East Chicago. I've never ever been even asked for a correction. And by the way, journalists are human, so people make mistakes. It doesn't mean you're a bad journalist. But honestly, I wouldn't spend your time wasting on them. What I think, for example, Stacey Abrams did well in Georgia. Ted Cruz did well. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez did well. Is targeting people who aren't voting.
Yeah.
I mean, why bother targeting people that have a stick up their ass? And it's not so much about the policy; it's more about the Bernie wants free stuff. Well, that mentality in general, that mentality is flawed, because the Medicare for all, the military, is that free stuff? Medicare, is that free stuff? Social Security, is that free stuff? Trump's tax cuts, is that free stuff? Because that's redistribution from us to the top. So honestly, don't lose sleep over it. And also, it's condescending. I mean, I guarantee you're doing more research than those people.
Right.
So when I went to Trump rallies, I was stunned. When I would cover those Trump rallies, I'd ask, not a few, a lot of people, who's your candidate if not Trump? No hesitation, Bernie. So there's a lot of Republicans out there that are closet progressives on the issues. Now, they wouldn't call themselves progressives because they are boogerized by the word socialism. But they're for universal health care. They're against the bank bailouts. They're against crony capitalism. They're against tax cuts for Walmart and Amazon. A lot of Republicans. So that's what I say to that.
Well, you know what the thing is, John, and I'll leave you with this before we move on to the next thing, is that these people that are older than me, I'm 29 years old, not too much older, I mean younger than you. Yeah, that's right. And these people grew up with FDR. I mean, he's the one that tried to implement a lot of Bernie's programs. And I know he wasn't maybe a great guy personality-wise, but we're talking about the programs. He was told to think big, not small. This is supposed to be America, but these people that are older than us, they apparently they just lost faith, or they just kind of have been brainwashed down the road not to think big anymore, like Bernie says. But I do agree with you. We have I live not too far from Tampa, actually, right now, and I live right up the road from this guy he's got his Trump sticker on his car, and he's a by God Trump guy to kingdom come. But he doesn't love Bernie, but he said if I was to vote for a Democrat, he would vote for Bernie. And I've run into quite a few people that are conservative, right-wing Republicans saying the same thing. I totally agree. And then you run into these people that are Democrats, and they say, oh, Bernie's got a big ego. He's not going to get it done. We can't vote for that. We can't get it done. They want to vote for Kamala Harris, but I totally agree with you, and I just wanted to say that.
Well, on Kamala Harris, frankly, and I'm being hypocritical here because I didn't say this about Obama. They want to talk about ego. She's been in the Senate for 2 minutes and she's running for president.
Yeah.
Is that not ego?
Same
so, listen, if they want to talk about ego, say, you're not voting for, your boyfriend here. You're voting for a president. I think it takes ego to run for public office, frankly. Some ego is not bad. So, but listen, if they're talking about that, you're never gonna be able to convince them because they're not open. It's For example, and I talked to Ty about this. I'm open to interviewing Republicans. I'm open to interviewing neoliberals. I'm even open to interviewing the near attendant crowd. But why I don't in many cases is because what's the point of interviewing people that are set in their ways? If like for me, if I was persuaded by an argument that I would say, oh, that's interesting. I never thought about it that way. I'm gonna have to look more into it. Oh, you know what? You might not be as wrong as I thought. That's the kind of debate that's good. But if you're going to interview people that are just on Team Clinton or Team Kamala, no matter what, then what's the point? You're just talking into an echo. You're talking into an echo. So don't waste your time trying to reach those people.
Well, it goes back to the same thing, and we'll end on that with Hillary Clinton. They want a woman president. It's identity politics. I want to vote for somebody that's black, white, my age, this person's age, and we can't have that in this country. This election is too big for that. That's the way I believe. So to go into some fun questions, who's your favorite politician, throughout history, I guess?
My favorite politician throughout history. I really like Dennis Kucinich. I think he didn't get a lot of play. Obviously,
he got screwed this past election, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like, obviously, FDR. The more I study Martin Luther King, and I would say, honestly, my favorite, there was a guy named Henry Wallace, who came up during the Cold War, and he ran for president, and he was kind of like Bernied a little bit, he was made into a communist sympathizer and this and that because he didn't want a Cold War. Very, very progressive policies. I think he would have made a great president. Oliver Stone, in Oliver Stone's documentary series, Untold History of the United States, has a lot about Henry Wallace. If you watch old speeches from Henry Wallace, he spoke a lot of themes Bernie Sanders is talking about. And I also think Bernie Sanders can borrow from Henry Wallace because honestly, and I would kindly correct you, these actually aren't big ideas. Right. This is the notion that the capitalist order has put out there. These are radical. These are big ideas. No, they're not. Every other country has them. They're standard ideas. They're standard ideas. But Henry Wallace, for sure. He's not a politician, but I also am a huge admirer of Cornel West. Right. If you watch Cornel West speak, he has me at the brother, and Cornel West. I respect people that see the bigger picture. So, for example, he goes on CNN to respond to the Ralph Northam blackface thing, but he says, brother, it's not really about Ralph Northam. It's about the deeper thing. That's how Cornel West thinks, and whenever he goes into the media, he looks at the bigger picture, not like the scandal of the minute. So I really like Cornel West.
And what's your favorite story that you've covered? I mean, you've covered all these different stories for Status Coup. What's the best favorite story that you've covered for Status Coup?
For Status Coup so far?
I mean, you could do TYT politics if you'd like.
Yeah. I think my favorite, there's favorite and then there's most powerful. So my favorite story was definitely the campaign. As my first campaign covering, you're covering on one end a total circus, like probably we haven't seen in American politics on the Trump end. And on the other end, I'm human too. So a lot of these rallies I covered with Bernie, I was personally moved. You see crowds that are just you could tell when people are kind of in person being like changed and moved and mesmerized. So that happened a lot. So the campaign was definitely my favorite. Most powerful, hands down, is Flint, because I think Flint is kind of ground zero for everything that's wrong in America. I think Flint, it's not just about the water. It's very similar to Detroit. There is a controlled demolition that's been going on for many, many years, decades, that has gone after places like Flint and Detroit, and places where you had a very, very strong base of average workers who, had good benefits, could take a vacation, 2 cars, the suburban American dream. And that was not, frankly, a dream that extended to black people for the most part. But Flint is powerful because honestly, it's like Flint is like its own little island that the rest of the media is totally disconnected from. All you got to do is go to Flint for about a day, and you'll see it never really stopped being a total crisis. I mean, it's still a crisis. You have people still actively getting rashes from the water, people losing their hair, people with cognitive difficulties, all these things. So Flint, and I would also say in a shorter period of time, Standing Rock was really Standing Rock was a moment rather than a story. You know, Standing Rock was a moment that, again, was not just about water. I think there's a lot of different movements that came together at Standing Rock, not just environmental. You had civil rights movement. You had fight for. I mean, you had literally activist groups from all over the place. Renewables, Black Lives Matter, Fight for 15, LGBT. You could go on.
Yeah.
All of them just kind of condensed in this one camp in North Dakota, of all places, and it was a really incredible experience. You know, I'm a white Jew from Long Island, and you know, to stand in like prayer circles as they're doing a prayer ceremony for a Native American to give him a feather, which is an honorary tribute in Native American culture for chaining himself to a construction machine. That was like day one in Standing Rock for me. To stand with Native Americans who are getting shot at by this little tiny water body, and you see like basically oil cops at the top of the mountain. You wonder, am I in America actually? And then to go back to the casino/hotel and turn on CNN and they're like Don Lemon talking about something Trump tweeted. I mean, this is why I do what I do, because there's really an alternative reality that is painted out there. So I think Standing Rock, Flint are definitely the most powerful. I think the campaign is definitely my favorite for sure.
All right. And two more quick questions. What was the most dangerous story you covered? I know you and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I know you and Ty got arrested in Missouri. Was that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. That a most dangerous story? Or was there another dangerous story that maybe you got arrested or you got, hurt or anything in?
Yeah. I mean, whenever you cover protests, it's a bit dangerous because really the First Amendment doesn't particularly matter to the police and the politicians that protect the police.
Right.
The most dangerous was definitely Standing Rock because honestly, sometimes you started thinking, are real bullets going to start flying soon? You know, because frankly, President Obama was not doing anything. And we later learned his Justice Department, Homeland Security was working with the oil police there. So that was scary because, where you're standing, it's three things going on. You could be pepper sprayed, you could be shot with a rubber bullet, where do the research. I mean, if a rubber bullet shoots you point blank range, you could die.
Well, didn't the girl get blinded? There was a girl over there that got blinded.
There was an indigenous woman lost eyesight in her left eye from tear gas being shot at her point blank range. 21-year-old basically has like a makeshift arm made out of other body parts because she had a grenade fired at her. This is what happens in war zones. I was fortunate. It's really a miracle I wasn't arrested. Really, the reason I wasn't arrested was because when I was there, the 7 times I was there, one I remember in particular, like they put up a yellow line, and if the protesters passed it, people would get arrested. I was prepared to pass it, to cover it, but that day people didn't cross it. There was also stuff at like they would have an action at the local bank that was supporting the pipeline where I couldn't actually get into the bank. If I went into the bank, I would have got arrested, but they had already guarded it off. So it was really more like logistical why I didn't get arrested. But yeah, Standing Rock was scary because basically, even if you were a New York Times or Washington Post reporter, but probably they'd be okay. But they didn't really look at like a young Turks reporter or if it was status coup as journalists. They just looked at anybody there fighting this pipeline or trying to expose what was going on with this pipeline as, eco-terrorists. So that was definitely scary. But listen, I mean, you got to take risks for this in this line of work. So.
And my last question is on YouTube. So I was watching Jimmy Dore this morning when I woke up, and apparently YouTube has done more things to censor people. Apparently they came out and they said that if there was a pedophilia thing, I don't know if you heard this yet, but he reported it today, and it said that if somebody writes something, comment on your page, now they can shut the whole page down. What is your take on trying to get your message out as status quo rather, with YouTube trying to censor you? I know I don't get when you go live. I don't, always get the update and the notification saying, "Hey, status quo's going live." Uh, YouTube just keeps censoring you guys and other shows. How do you kind of fight against that, or how will you keep fighting against that?
Yeah, I haven't seen Jimmy's video yet, but I know YouTube is now trying to basically make hosts of channels responsible for what their commenters do, which is kind of ridiculous. But anyway, honestly, long term, which might actually be sooner than we think, I don't want to primarily broadcast on YouTube. I think depending on third-party platforms like YouTube, Facebook, is a recipe for disaster for just as a business model, because you're at the mercy of whatever they're going to do. Even having your own website, you're at the mercy of Google's algorithm and this and that. But it's really about I don't mean programming in a bad way, but you got to program viewers in a way that they come to your website rather than YouTube. That's not easy because people live on Facebook and YouTube, on Twitter. But long term and probably in the short term, we are going to be trying to broadcast on our website. Where you just have a appointment internet. People know the Young Turks is on a set time every night. We're trying to build that same repetition where people come. I tell people just put it in your calendar on your phone. So long term, short answer and long answer, we're not going to try to work within the confines of what YouTube's doing, because it's very clear through YouTube's algorithm, as well as just what the company is doing, that they are no longer there for you; they are there for their advertisers, and that's not a platform that we're going to thrive on. It's also difficult you got to straddle a line also as a business, because frankly, Ty has to eat, I have to eat, yeah. Jen has to eat, so there is revenue in YouTube. So we're not making a lot from YouTube yet, but you don't want to unilaterally get off of YouTube, because then you're losing revenue from there. But at the same time, Jimmy is a different story, because Jimmy's channel was already up and running and growing a huge following before YouTube started its algorithm screwery. We started after. So not to say Jimmy hasn't dealt with it, but we've dealt with it from the start. So honestly, if we didn't deal with it, we're about to hit 30,000 subscribers in a year. We'd probably be closer to 80 to 100 without all this algorithm stuff. So to answer it, I think that, listen, we right now YouTube's the main game, but we also have to be creative, because as Jen always tells me, we know that there's the audience. The audience is there. And I still see people coming and being like, I didn't even know you had this channel. People from my old days at the Young Turks. So we know the audience is there. You just got to be more creative how to reach them. But I believe that if you do the journalism no one else does, there's an audience for it. You just got to reach them.
And my last thing is, how can people find you, Jordan? How can they follow Status Coup? How can they donate? And also, if people for some reason financially can't donate, can they volunteer? What can they do?
Yeah, so statuscoup.com, statuscoup.com. You could get our videos there, the same as YouTube. You could become a member there. We have different plans, $5 a month, $10 a month, $20 a month, or $147 annually. Each level, comes with different perks. You also, part of it is trying to grow our email list. So when you get to the website, put in your email, but also you could click. There will be a pop-up at the website for you to click allow, and then you'll get notifications from our website when we publish videos, which so far seem to be more reliable than YouTube. So yeah, of course, our YouTube channel is youtube.com/statuscoup. And yeah, I always tell viewers, don't rely on YouTube. I mean, Ty goes live with me and gets an alert, 2-3 hours later, sometimes a day later. So my mom messaged me like, oh, I just got an alert. Were you live? And I'm like, no, that was a long time ago. So, yeah, youtube.com/statuscoup. And, I would say for your audience, really, it's about thinking about, what do you spend $5 on a day, really? or $10 on a week, or $20 on a month, or 147 in a year. Because if you want real change, what that takes is waking more people up. And I've seen in my travels, especially when I show Republicans, it's always interesting. When I show them my videos, the response isn't like, you hippie liberal, you socialist. It's like, why isn't anyone covering this? So there's a lot of people, you would be surprised, that are open and angry about the state of the country, but they don't get what we're doing. They don't get this coverage on their local media. They certainly don't get it on their national media. So yeah, I would really encourage people to become members. If you can't become a member, we do have volunteers. We're trying to establish that network. We're just doing 25 things at once. But you could go to statuscoup.com/volunteer. And if you can't donate, if you can't become a member, you can share our videos. You can put it in your phone, 5 o'clock Eastern, Monday through Friday, and watch. And you can be an ambassador for us. You know, tell your friends, family. Word of mouth actually still is a thing, even in the Twitter age. So that's how people can support us.
Jordan, I appreciate you coming on. You really gave a lot of your time. I know you're a busy man. And I think I heard Ty in the background. Send him my regards. He does good work. And I hope he's on more on the channel reporting, because he does good.
You know, honestly, the reason Ty is not on more in my apartment is because I have a crazy neighbor, and Ty can get a little loud. So I'm afraid of getting kicked out. So I'm not trying to suppress Ty, but you know,
That's exactly.
I gotta keep the roof over my head, and she'll try to get me kicked out. But no, part of membership, we got to grow our revenue, because I do definitely want to hire capital R reporters that want to get out in the field. But you know, money don't grow on trees for us independent media. So we're working to get enough money to hire some more people.
Well, I hope he feels better, because I know he's kind of under the weather right now. And I know you had an issue. Didn't you have an issue with your back a while ago?
Yeah, I was.
I hope you're feeling all right too.
Yeah, I had back surgery about a year ago, and still a few kinks, but way better than before when I could barely walk. So yeah, I'm doing well.
Well, I appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much. We're looking forward to watching more of your videos tonight and throughout the year and years to go. So I really appreciate the time. It means a lot, and I'm a huge fan. So
Thanks, Rob. Good luck.
all right, thanks so much. Bye now.
No problem.